Perfect.
Oh, I got a YouTube notification on my phone.
Right. All right, let's do it. It is draft week, and the Dolphins have a first-round pick for the first time in the Mike McDaniel era. What will they do with it? What's up, Dolphins fans, and welcome to the pre-draft edition of Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. I'm your host, South Florida Sun Sentinel Dolphins columnist Chris Perkins. That's David Ferones, your South Florida Sun Sentinel Dolphins writer. As always, we welcome our viewers, and we invite you to comment and ask questions on our live chat. We remind you, if you miss any part of this show, you can catch the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, we've got an online Dolphins poll on sunsentinel.com we'd like you to vote in. We're asking you who you think the Dolphins should select with their first-round pick. The Dolphins have 6 picks in this draft. Most notably, they have a first-round pick. It's number 21, so we're going to discuss what they should do with that pick here in a few minutes. We're also going to talk about whether quarterback Tua Tagovailoa should get a contract extension this year. You guys know my thoughts on that one. And we'll talk about what the Dolphins can hope for from their mid-round picks of previous years. Devon Achane, Channing Tindall, guys like that. There's a group that has very little middle ground, right? They've been pretty good when you look at Javon Holland, Liam Eichenberg, and guys like that. And then you go to the other side, Cam Smith and Channing Tindall. So we're going to talk about whether that group, the non-first-round draftees, can find some middle ground in 2024. There's a deep pool of possibilities in this draft. Let's dive in. All right, Ferones, so we are going to talk about what the Dolphins should do with their first-round pick on Thursday night. Should they trade up? Should they trade down? Should they trade out of the first round? And before we get started, we want to welcome some of our people watching. Nandito357, the former Noop 942001, right? That's like the artist formerly known as Prince, isn't it? Welcome, Nandito. Peter McDowell here with us also. So welcome, Raphael Courtwright. Welcome to you. So thanks for you guys joining us on the new day, because the Dolphins are going to be doing some stuff on Tuesday. So we're joining you on Monday. So, Ferones, what do you think your Miami Dolphins should do in the first round of the draft on Thursday night?
Well, you saw my pick in my mock draft, but with a lot of O-linemen that should go in that latter half of the first round, I do like a trade down scenario so the Dolphins can add another day 2 pick in a draft where they don't pick in the 3rd or 4th round. So I actually see you're coming around to my way of thinking with your latest mock draft with the trade down. If you haven't checked out either one of those, make sure you check that out on sunsentinel.com. But I like Graham Barton from Duke. He has positional versatility, so he can immediately slide in at guard, which you did lose Robert Hunt this year in free agency, and also on the interior offensive line. Questions about Connor Williams. You did bring in Aaron Brewer from Tennessee, but he can slide in at guard now, but maybe he can become a tackle after Teron Armstead retires. Maybe this is his last season after he already flirted with the idea of retirement this offseason, but decided to come back. Barton has athleticism that fits the wide zone scheme well, so I think I like that a little bit better than Jackson Powers Johnson. Now, if Leatu Latu or Jared Verse or maybe Byron Murphy, all who I've gone by 21, end up there, then you might have to just take one of those guys. Maybe if you feel one of those tackles is can't miss if you're the Dolphins, but there's just so many that are going to go in that range. But I do like to trade down to add some draft capital. Now, Perk, I saw in your latest one, you had Latu the first time. Then you still have him available and still on the board, but then you trade down. So I'm wondering your thought process in now passing on Latu if he's there at 21.
Well, here's my thought process. In my first mock draft, which did not allow for trades, I had them taking Latu at number 21. Second mock draft, which did allow for trades, I have the Dolphins trading down to number 31 with San Francisco, picking up a second-round pick in the process. and then taking Jordan Morgan, the tackle from Arizona, who could also play guard, kind of like Graham Barton. Here's my thinking. I think the Dolphins are going to go edge rusher, offensive tackle with their first 2 picks. I don't know if they take edge rusher first round or offensive tackle first round, but the offensive tackle that they take, I think, probably needs to have some guard capabilities so that he can get some snaps this season while Teron Armstead finishes up. You do have a situation of a guy like Amarius Mims, right? The tackle from Georgia, who needs a little more seasoning. So if the Dolphins take him, either by trading down or at number 21, he sits on the bench probably. He's not really projected as a guard, so he sits on the bench. So I prefer having somebody who's going to get some snaps as a rookie. So that's why I would prefer an offensive tackle who can play guard. And by the way, with your pick of Graham Barton, I think you're kind of looking more guard center, right? Or Jackson Powers Johnson. I'm kind of looking guard tackle. So that's another interesting thing with the Dolphins. Like, what do they do? Is it interior offensive line help, or is it one of the tackles? I think that's a big question for them. I don't know how they ultimately resolve that, but for me, I would go edge rusher and offensive tackle. Edge rusher also, that's an impact position. Offensive tackle is a position of need in the future when Armstead is gone, but that edge rusher, to me, you got to get an edge rusher in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's questions with Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. Now, for everything we've heard, their rehabs are going well. But if they're not available to start the season, then if you get an edge rusher early in the draft and that he becomes your starter very early on, and then if either one of them, Phillips or Chubb, aren't coming back the way you knew them to be before their injuries, then yeah, you need that next guy that's going to come in and be one of those starting edge rushers, and also who can just rotate in with these guys so that they don't put that burden on themselves so much with all the snaps. So yeah, I mean, I definitely see edge rusher, and I'm looking in the trenches. I'm looking in the trenches either side, because if you can get a D tackle like a Byron Murphy or a Johnny Newton from Illinois, who was recruited to Illinois by current Dolphins defensive line coach Austin Clark, then yeah, so there's a connection there. But you did lose Christian Wilkins in this round of free agency, so that you could find your replacement there. And then obviously offensive line, we've spoken ad nauseum about whether tackle or guard, and also Barton with the positional versatility. I mean, he could be a guard right now, but then yeah, you're talking about your approach of looking at tackle. Well, he could be the tackle in the future too. So that's why I kind of view him as a home run.
Yeah, no, you're right. Graham Barton can play all 3 positions. And I think that some people think that center is his best position, but for somebody who's an NFL level center, guard, and tackle, that's a pretty good asset to put on your team. Troy says, fins up from Louisville. Troy, home of Valhalla, home of the U.S. Open here coming up, right, in a few weeks. Peter McDowell says, if Jarrett Verse drops to 21, we can't pass on him. But otherwise, it's probably interior offensive line or best defensive tackle. I think it has to be one of those areas. That's what you're saying, Furones. You're looking at the interior, the trenches on both sides of the ball. Look, what do you think about a guy like Chop Robinson from Penn State, edge rusher? Darius Robinson from Missouri can play inside or outside when you're talking about other defensive players. Do either of them do anything? I like the inside-outside versatility of Darius Robinson. He's kind of like a Graham Barton in that sense. I think there's a lot of players that could really fit the mold for the Dolphins. To me, at number 21, you're not going to get a home run, but you can get a solid player who's got a Pro Bowl or 2 in his future. And to me, that's the thing that you want to get in this first round. Don't miss out, because previous years you could kind of afford to miss out, take a chance, take a swing on something. But again, this is a team that is trying to win a Super Bowl while Tua is on the lower end of the salary scale. So this draft and this first round pick matters. What do you think about Chop Robinson or Darius Robinson? Either of those guys do anything for you, Furones?
Yeah, I mean, not at 21. I think that's a little early for either one of them. I mean, yeah, they'll probably go in that later in the first round, or maybe fringe going into day 2, early in the second, very early in the second, if they do last that long. But I just don't like either at 21 per se. So edge rusher, I would like if Latu is there, if Verse is there. Although I think both of them will be gone by then. In my mock draft, I had Latu going to the Jaguars at 17. Him teaming up with Josh Allen, bringing Saxonville back. I think they would form one of the elite edge rushing combos. But also then I wouldn't have him going past 19 to the Rams. Keeping him in LA, UCLA guy, the Rams keeping him there in LA. So it would be difficult for me to see him lasting past that. And then Verse I have going even earlier. So I really don't think he would make it to 21. But yeah, also, and Troy Fautanu, that's another one I wanted to mention.
Yes.
He would be great if he was if the Dolphins were able to land him. But I have him going 16 to the Seattle Seahawks. Also, sort of a local connection there, Washington tackle, and then he goes to Seattle. And there's also a coaching connection that he has there with the OC. But also, here's one thing I'm looking at. How deep does Brock Bowers drop before you say, okay, we're trading up to get a guy like Brock Bowers or any other prospect that should go higher? If one of those guys drops, like a Brock Bowers, what's the pick where you say, okay, at this point, maybe we do have to trade up? Because we're talking about a lot of trade down scenarios, and you mentioned trade up to start the segment.
Yep.
Yeah, what would be the spot kind of for a guy like that who really would be? You talk about home runs, he would be a home run pick.
He would be a huge home run. Look, Furones, I would tell you this. It depends on what the Dolphins feel comfortable giving up. But to me, gosh, if he slides past, I want to say if he slides past number I wouldn't let the Jets have a shot at him. So I guess if he slides past number 7, I probably start making phone calls, because if he's at number 9, it's probably too late. The Jets are going to get him. So if he slides past like maybe 7, I probably start making calls. I would want to get him before the Jets at number 10. But if that dude starts, if there's indications, I guess, that he's sliding, I should say that. Then I'm going to start making phone calls. If he gets past the Jets, and I don't think that you're going to get him. I don't think you're going to get him. So that's if I start hearing whispers, I'm making calls.
Yeah, because if he's going 10 to the Jets, I don't consider that sliding. He's a top 10 pick at that point, and it's going to be very costly to move up that far up the draft. So then I think you just can't at that point. I'm thinking worst case scenario is probably 15 to the Colts, that he doesn't get past that pick. If the Jets pass on him or they trade out, whatever, something else happens, or if one of the top receivers are there and the Jets rather go that route, or they go one of the tackles, and Brock Bowers starts to drop, then maybe you could try to get in ahead of the Colts, maybe, where I think that would be the last pick that he could possibly last to. But, I think the Jets will have their say at Brock Bowers, where if he's there at 10, then they probably just snag him right there and give Aaron Rodgers a weapon.
Yeah, it would be very, very costly, but I'm kind of in that spot of you've got to go for it right now. Here's an interesting one. Let's see. It was Pete Stakes. Pete Stakes. Don't be shy to say it, guys. Draft a quarterback, please. Here's my thoughts on that. I don't want to draft a quarterback in the first round. I think Chris Greer was totally correct on that, because you can't take a chance this year. You need that person to make an impact right away. And there's no indication that Tua's not. I plan on Tua being here next season. I'll put it that way. Whether it's on a contract extension or a franchise tag, I expect Tua.
Way to go out on a limb there, Perk.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying.
Your option. We already know that.
No, but that's why I wouldn't draft a quarterback in the first round, because Tua's going to be here. Like if there was a chance that you weren't going to re-sign Tua, okay, maybe if there was a greater than 50%, and then after the, first or second round, you need those picks. And then if you're going to take a quarterback in the 5th, well, that's kind of like a Skylar Thompson. So I'm against taking a quarterback, because you need the first and second round picks to make an impact this year. and in the 5th, 6th, or 7th, it's kind of inconsequential.
Yeah, you're trying to win now, and that would be not wasting the 2 years of development that you've had with Tua under Mike McDaniel and this offense. So you're not just going to throw that away to bring in a quarterback. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about it. It's going to be a good transition here going into our next segment about his contract talks. But, yeah, we already know Chris Greer said not in the first round. And then I would deem it highly unlikely that the second round the Dolphins are taking a quarterback. So, I mean, maybe they just end up, if they like one of the lower quarterbacks, same way they had Skylar Thompson a couple of years back, then maybe they draft Tua's next backup. And, you know, there's an out with Mike White's contract, even though he is under contract, and Skylar Thompson, same way. They could let a new guy compete if he's taken later in the draft. So that's more so the quarterback look that I would be looking at, not so much if the Dolphins are drafting a new franchise quarterback, new starter for the future. I mean, that is Tua right now for the foreseeable future.
Right, and Pete's takes also brings up Bo Nix. George Dock says, you know, where did he was saying unless someone falls. Peter McDowell says, what if J.J. McCarthy is still there at 21? Does Steve Ross pass up his Michigan quarterback? Again, you know, Michael Penix is another name, the Washington quarterback, right? 2nd round pick possibility. Again, I just think you need this player to make an impact, and so a quarterback would not make an impact for a couple of years. So that's my thought on that one. For honest, let's move on since we are talking quarterback. Yeah. The Tua contract extension, would it help or hurt the 2024 Dolphins? Now, you know, I wrote a column that was not very well received about Tua. They shouldn't extend him this year, and they shouldn't give him superstar money. It wasn't an anti-Tua column. It was a column that said, wait until after this year to decide how much you're going to give Tua because he's still an injury risk. That's number one. And then number two, see if that number can come down because, look, fair market value for Tua, just to ballpark it could be about a $45 million cap hit, $120 million guaranteed, somewhere around there, the fair market value. I think that's too much. But look, both sides have a hammer, right? Because Tua can say, look, if you guys don't sign me now and I go to a Pro Bowl or I win a playoff game, my price goes through the roof. The Dolphins could say, Tua, you better sign what's in front of you now. It's below market value, but if you get a multi-game injury, whether it's a concussion or a broken finger, that guaranteed money almost disappears. So there's two sides to it. I think Tua should be here. He should be the Dolphins quarterback of the future. Pro Bowl quarterback, no doubt. But at a certain point, the money hampers your ability to put the necessary Super Bowl winning talent around Tua. And that's what I'm saying. That I know what the market value is. The Dolphins have to get under market value somehow without insulting Tua.
Perk, how nice of you to attend Tua's wonderful event, his luau with Tua, a smile in his face as he gives us time in front of the cameras and answers some football questions, although a lot of non-answers in those responses, but also talks about his foundation, all the great work that he's doing in South Florida, and then enjoy a few cocktails before the event over there on Tua's dime, and then write that column the next day. But I got to give you credit. You're one guy who is not going to be influenced, in your opinion, by some nice gestures and a nice event thrown by Tua here down here in South Florida. So I got to give you credit that you stick to your guns there. So.
Right. Hey, people are nice to me, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Oh, well, I hear you on some of your points. Now, I think they're getting a contract extension done this offseason, hands down. I mean, I think that much is already settled. Chris Greer has already said as much. Mike McDaniel has said the Dolphins want to do as much. So So that much, I feel like they're committed to that. They are doing it this offseason. Now it's just a matter of figuring out the number and getting all the little other intricacies that go into these sort of contract talks, getting all that squared away before you put the pen to paper. So, but now, how much is he going to get paid? Now, there are quarterbacks that are making above $50 million in the average annual value. You're talking about Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts got that money. Lamar Jackson got that kind of money. So there's four of those. Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, they got their contracts a little bit before that. So then they're not up in that threshold. But quarterback contracts, all contracts continue to evolve. So you sort of keep stepping up the ladder. And even if he is one of the highest paid now, if he signs that this offseason, then in future offseasons, the next quarterbacks down the line, they end up getting more money anyway. So then in a couple of years, it doesn't look like it's that much. But that said, yeah, I don't want to hamstring the organization by paying him something outrageous when you need to be able to build around him. So you want to be right now. You're trying to win now with Tyreek Hill at 30, with Jalen Ramsey at 29, and Teron Armstead on his last year, etc. You don't know what the future holds for Bradley Chubb, for Jalen Phillips. So yeah, you're trying to win now. So you want to make Tua happy, but you also don't want to leave yourself strapped for cash in the future when you want to give Tua Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And when Tyreek Hill moves on, he said that he only wants to play 10 years. You want to be able to pay Jalen Waddle his contract extension, so Tua has him, and then bring in the next top target that's going to be there alongside him. You want to keep a strong defense there, so you give yourself the best chance to win the way your whole team is built, not just because, hey, you paid your quarterback big money. So I think exactly that. You get it done. You operate in good faith. You don't let it get to next year where then if he has another great season, now you can't, because he can just turn around and say, oh, well, now I can make more elsewhere. But you also don't want to just compete against yourself and just outbid yourself by saying, we'll meet whatever number you want and we'll make you the highest paid quarterback just because we want to show we have so much faith in you. So you have to find that balance.
Yeah, and let me ask you this. When you look at guys like Dak Prescott, and really with me, I'm worried about the salary cap hit. The average annual money, that's whatever. But the salary cap hit is really what limits you, and so that's what I want the Dolphins to be able to get down. If Tua, I don't care what Tua makes, it's the salary cap is what. That's what limits you from building. So when you see something like Dak Prescott making the $55 million, right? And look, Deshaun Watson at 63 cap hit, that's just ridiculous. But when you have Daniel Jones at 47 and Dak Prescott at 55, that's the area that I'm talking about that I don't want to see Tua in. Mahomes is at 37. That's just ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Bottom line basement. They got lucky on that. Mahomes is a nice guy. What do you think is the number for Tua? Because I'm thinking like 35, 37. I don't. Tua would probably be very insulted by that.
I'll tell you that's not happening.
I know.
Well, I remember even hearing within the Dolphins organization that from the previous offseason, sort of back then, not anymore, but back then 40 was kind of the hope, kind of expecting the 40 million range. Now, Daniel Jones got that much. Now, Tua is a better quarterback than Daniel Jones, but that's on the Giants. They ended up throwing that much money at Daniel Jones over there. So, now the price has gone up because now he had another solid season, a little bit of an uptick in interceptions from the 25 touchdowns to 8 interceptions the year before when he was the highest rated quarterback in 22, first year under Mike McDaniel, but a little bit more in the turnover department, but he stayed healthy the whole season, which was the big thing. What was the one big thing we were talking about all last offseason going into that 2023 year was for him to play a full season, and he did that. So he did that while maintaining a level of play, strong level of play, and even hit the deep ball even more so to Tyreek Hill. The deep over-the-top shots, those were seen in greater abundance last season as opposed to, he had all the yards per attempt in 22 also, but it was a lot of just the safeties were so far back that then Tyreek Hill for 20, he was left with so much space over there that he was able to just turn around and he was wide open for a lot of those. So now we're seeing Tua even go over the top of defenses with greater frequency. So all these things add up to Tua's price going up. Now, then it's starting to get put out there. You see the different sides work in the media where, then all of a sudden it's reports where Tua could be in line to be the highest paid quarterback. And then you're saying, okay, well, let's temper those expectations a little bit. Let's not go say all that. But so I'm looking at, I was hopeful of 45. I think higher 40s now. Once you go above 50, then that's where it kind of gets tricky and a little bit too much if you want to be able to build and have flexibility around him, especially when you consider that cap number year to year.
Right. Court Haven says, damn, Perkins is a snake, LOL. Yeah, I did. I took to his liquor, and I am. I'm kind of a snake, but I'm a garter snake, though. I'm harmless. I'm really harmless.
In your defense, you needed those beverages. You were outside. You were in a sport coat. You were sweating over there. I mean, you might have passed out if you hadn't had anything to drink. So luckily, you were able to get like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
You're right. It was in the name of hydration. I was the only idiot who didn't catch poolside luau. You don't wear jeans and you don't wear a sports coat. I didn't put that together, but now I know. I'm an idiot. Legend says Tua isn't it. 5 years of mediocrity coming. Raphael Courtwright says, agreed, Legend. Troy says, AFC championship appearance or bust. So when we hear all that, Furones, this is what, if I'm the Dolphins, I can't insult Tua, but I'm saying, look, we're paying you all this money, Tua. You stayed healthy last year, but we still had a first-round playoff loss. What are we paying you for? And if we pay you $45 million a year, how can we put the necessary tools around you? You almost have to be a jerk if you're the Dolphins and put this on Tua and say, look, you stayed healthy. We didn't go anywhere. We need to put more talent around you. Can you take a little less and help us out? That's kind of a jerky thing to do if you're the Dolphins, but you're trying to win a Super Bowl. You almost have to do that, don't you?
Yeah, and it's funny because these last couple seasons, it's been all about from the Dolphins is building confidence in Tua, instilling confidence, making sure you let him know that you believe in him. And that's how he's been able to develop these last couple seasons to get to where he is now. But now when you go to the negotiating table, it's not, you cut that off where it's not so much, we have so much confidence in you that we're going to make you the highest paid quarterback. No. Now let's take a step back. We're going to pay you what you deserve, what you've earned, but we also feel like we need to build a team around you. It's not just like, okay, like the way Patrick Mahomes, you let Tyreek Hill go and you win back-to-back Super Bowls with your receivers dropping a bunch of passes. I don't think that's happening in Miami. You need Tyreek Hill there. You need him catching passes. You need the weaponry around Tua, his playmakers, and that defense. I think you want to, because even with everything, you've still made 2 first-round exits, not winning the division, wild card appearances. So you need to be able to take a step further. Now, we understand Tua didn't play that 22 playoff game in Buffalo. He was out with a concussion. And then once he's healthy, you have all these other injuries. Half of the starting defense, all your playmakers are at least hampered a little bit, whether it's Mostert, whether it's Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, all of them playing that playoff game a little bit banged up. So, yeah, you have your built-in excuses, but you still need to be able to put a roster around him. So it's not like Tua's just going to, if you pay him and then you can't pay anyone else, it's not like Tua's going to lift you to a Super Bowl on his own. You need a team around him. And I think he would understand that too. And he's such a team guy. I believe he would be the first to tell you because even he was saying, while a lot of people put him in MVP talks, when I asked him late last season, and he said, well, Tyreek Hill would be my vote for team MVP. So smart guy to say that about his top receiver. And I think it's the truth. You need that top receiver to be your best player.
Right. John Russell and Brian Landis, welcome to the chat here. Hooked Up Joe, welcome. Hooked Up Joe says the cap going up to $52 million per year will be cap going up $52 million per year will be a deal for a franchise quarterback with the cap going up. I'm sorry. $52 million a year will be a deal for a franchise quarterback in a couple of years. We just need Tua to be that good, to be that going forward, and we are good. Yes, you need him to be what he is, but you need him to be better. and you also need to put better players around him. Like, Dak Prescott is not going to win you a Super Bowl with who's around him. You need more money to put better players around him, and that's my big deal here as far as paying Tua. It's not. I don't think Tua is that good. I think that most quarterbacks in the NFL, whether it's Dak Prescott or Jared Goff up in Detroit, you need players around you, and the more you take, the less their team has to put players around you, the less ability, and ultimately it's going to come back on you as the quarterback because you couldn't get them there, but you took up so much money, your GM couldn't get them there. So that's kind of how I look at it. Again, Court Haven said, "Thank God Perk is not our GM. Why would you insult your quarterback like that? That's just stupid." Look, you say it to the agent, but look, things get said, in baseball arbitration and in contract negotiations, things get said both ways, and then you kiss and make up and you play. That's the way it's got to be done. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not an insult, like you mentioned, Dak Prescott as well. Same way, you don't view him as a guy that's going to be able to lift the Cowboys without anything around him. So you need the pieces around him. Like he has CeeDee Lamb over there. So same way Tua has Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle here. So you want to be able to build that best roster around him. And I also believe Tua, being that team guy, he could see the value in that. And he's also going to make a lot of money on endorsements as well. We see him with Rocket Mortgage now. Yep. We have seen him with Muscle Milk. I know he's done other things. So I know, like Tom Brady, for example, didn't he take less a lot of those years so that the Patriots could keep that dynasty rolling? 2 decades it lasted. So hopefully Tua sees it somewhat of the same way while still getting what he deserves and has rightfully earned. Unlike what Perk is saying here, like if you just throw Tua away and just play out this last year and send him off.
I love it. Hey, real quick, John Russell did ask us, would you take a flyer on Joe Milton in the 6th or 7th round, the Tennessee quarterback? You've got a 7th rounder in Skyler. I just don't know that there's that much value. On the other hand, you're just robbing yourself of a special teams player as a rookie. Hopefully he develops into more. I wouldn't be mad at the Dolphins if they did that. So that's that. All right, we are now moving along to one of our favorite all-time segments on this show. A lot of drama around this segment. It is the Furones Bonus.
Oh, the Furones Bonus. I
love it, baby. I love it. All right, here we go. So it is draft time, and this week, we are asking, what is your most memorable Dolphins draft moment? Now, we've got a lot of choices, right? We remember when Christian Wilkins went up with Commissioner Roger Goodell, right? And he had kind of that failed shoulder bump, and then he put him in the big bear hug. We remember the Mike McDaniel reaction to Devon Achane, right? Kind of that fist pump thing. The Laramie Tunsil gas mask video. We all remember that. Incredibly memorable. What about Dan Marino sliding down to number 27 in 1983? A memorable, a bittersweet memorable moment for the Dolphins franchise. What about Tua revealing the pictures of his grandparents in the lining of his sports coat when he got drafted? A lot of possibilities. This is the Furones Bonus. What do you think? What's your most memorable moment, Furones?
Boy, so many choices, from the Laramie Tunsil gas mask incident leading him right into the Dolphins' lap. Yep. Wilkins stealing the show in his draft. Jalen Waddle, conversely, having very little reaction to getting drafted in 21. Tua in the COVID year now. So that's in recent history. Obviously, the Dolphins have an extensive history from building the core of those 70s Super Bowl teams. Dan Marino falling to them in 83. Some solid drafts in the 90s. So I was born in 1990. So, I mean, I wasn't around for all of those and didn't have sports consciousness, we could call it, for a lot of those picks or drafts early in my life. So for me, I got to go to the drafts that I remember watching and tracking growing up in South Florida. And boy, that Ted Ginn pick really withstands the test of time. I remember where I was. I was getting dressed for a cousin's wedding, actually. This was 2007 when the draft was still Saturday and Sunday, right? So it was early Saturday afternoon. I'm with the family. We're about to head out for the wedding as the pick is coming up, and anticipation builds, and we think the Dolphins are going to get a franchise quarterback in Brady Quinn.
Yep.
And it's Ted Ginn. And then we have that famous reaction video from the draft party with the fans up in arms. I couldn't believe the pick myself. All the hoopla and then the famous Cam Cameron quote, of course, of drafting Ted Ginn and his family. Yeah, it's just one of those. I remember where I was and with the family getting ready for a wedding, and then explaining to my Cuban father how the Dolphins are about to draft their next franchise quarterback, and me and my brother were messing around with him, saying since it's Brady Quinn, we're saying, the Dolphins are getting Brady, who him, he's kind of like not into all the off-season stuff, but he watches the games, and he is always cursing in Spanish at the TV whenever the Dolphins are playing the Patriots. And then all of a sudden when he hears, the Dolphins are getting Brady, and all of a sudden he loves it. so that was funny. And then all that build up, and then it's Ted Ginn and his family. So the draft is like, and now I'm going to be covering it, covering the Dolphins, and the first time they have a first round pick, but it's one of those things where you just always remember where you were. Like the next year, I was a senior at Southwest Miami High, and we had our grad bash in Orlando. So I remember they had the number 1 pick. So discussing, so the Cam Cameron year didn't work out, by the way, because they ended up with the number 1 pick the next year.
Right.
I remember discussing with my classmates on the bus to Islands of Adventure, the pick of Jake Long over Matt Ryan, as we had our grad bash senior year of high school, and then. When Laramie Tunsil happened, I was in the first couple of weeks in my tenure at the Sentinel. I was a high school sports writer, and I was covering a high school playoff baseball game, tracking the draft, and then seeing all that madness going on Twitter, seeing Laramie Tunsil with the gas mask. And I'm like, is that even him? Is someone just trying to sabotage him? But worked out for the Dolphins and turned into a lot of picks later on. I covered some draft parties of local players, different sides of it. Quincy Wilson, who went to university school and UF, he was really down when he didn't go in the first round. I remember I was at a high school track meet and then finished covering that, and I'm seeing late in the first round that night, he still hasn't gone off the board, so I'm hustling over to where I know he's holding his draft party, and then I catch the tail end of it and actually caught him kind of like storming out of the room. He was very upset that he didn't end up in the first round, but then I was back the next day. He wore a shirt that said that had poop emoji and happens under it, so bleep happens the next day. And then he was very happy when he got drafted second round to the Colts. And then the other side of it, I was at Calvin Ridley's draft party, first round selection to the Falcons, and really electric atmosphere. He was surrounded by a bunch of loved ones, and you just see that moment when he gets the call, and then everyone in the place knows that he's about to get picked. So the anticipation builds over those next several minutes, and then as he hears the name announced, the look on his face, everyone around him, all these people that he grew up with and have had such an impact on his life, just so happy for him. It's something unlike anything else. So hopefully I'll make some new memories with the Dolphins finally having a first rounder for the first time since I've been on the beat.
Yeah, hey, people love this. People love this. Pete State says Ferona's bonus is fire, and Raphael Courtwright, wow, Malby Crazy, welcome. He gives us an LOL. People love the Ferona's bonus. Great stories here. Here's a couple of more. Peter McDowell, big draft moment when we traded up for Deion Jordan, thinking we had a defensive stud, and oh man, did that not work out? But the hype at the time of the pick was intense. Yes, I remember that Deion Jordan thing. That was unfortunate.
I remember all of that.
It didn't turn out. His career didn't turn out very well. But yeah, that pick. Wow, that was unfortunate. Here's another one. How about the 2005 draft? Our fans took Ronnie Brown at number 2, which was cool. But Aaron Rodgers slid all the way to number 24 and became one of the greatest quarterbacks ever.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I remember where I was for all of these. I was playing a baseball game in like a 14 and under league that Saturday when Ronnie Brown was drafted. I remember talking about it with the guys on the team, and then where everyone kind of expected it was Ronnie Brown. Cadillac Williams was in that draft as well. I recall Cedric Benson. Yeah, there were a lot of running backs. Not like today. There was 3 running backs going in the top 5 picks, and that Deion Jordan draft. I was covering a Marlins game on a freelance assignment So I remember watching the draft while I had the baseball in front of me that I was covering.
And you know what? Now here's how out of touch I am. By the way, it's draft week, so let me give a quick plug for one of my favorite radio segments, the Hockman and Crowder Show. Every year they talk to other players and they get their draft night memories, and it's incredible how many of these players were disappointed on the draft night because they went lower than they thought, and they were pissed off. It's a real good segment that Hockman and Crowder do on the radio every year. But here's how out of touch I am draft wise with the Dolphins. I wrote a column saying Laramie Tunsil was a bad pick, and I am still all for taking the left tackle over Matt Ryan.
Jake Long, yeah.
Jake Long, yeah. Jake Long would have been a Hall of Famer if he wouldn't have gotten injured. I think he made the Pro Bowl in his first 4 years, but of course your value and left tackle versus a quarterback. I just don't think Matt Ryan was that great. I mean, he was good when you put a defense around him, and he finally got to the Super Bowl. But anyway, I'm out of touch.
Well,
obviously.
Then he did end up getting a quarterback that offseason in Chad Pennington, and who was number 2 in MVP voting, by the way. That was the last time the Dolphins had an MVP runner-up. Now, if the Wildcat had its own category for MVP, then maybe the Wildcat itself ends up being the MVP of the 2008 season. But, interestingly enough, then the Dolphins did get their quarterback, but the Pennington era didn't last very long, and then the Dolphins were right back to mediocrity after winning their last AFC East title in 2008.
Yep. And George Doc says Jake Long. Thank you, George. I was struggling there. George also says, how about the Charles Harris pick? Yeah, that was not a good first round pick, was it? Eesh.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't even mention Zach Thomas and Jason Taylor. I actually don't even remember when they were drafted, what their reaction was, what the Dolphins' reaction was. I mean, they were down in the draft, so I don't think anybody was like really fist pumping. But it's funny how those Hall of Famers, we don't even bring that up. It's funny.
Yeah. It's more so the moments, the moments that you remember.
And the high round picks. The high round picks.
Yeah, so I was trying to stick to first round. So, I wasn't thinking of, like Jason Taylor or Zach Thomas going, later rounds. But obviously those 90s drafts were very strong. The Jimmy Johnson drafts that built that defense especially. But it's the moments that you remember. When you expect something to happen and then it goes elsewhere, like that Ted Ginn one. That's ultimately my choice there.
Right. Yeah, good choice. And look, and we do remember the only Mike McDaniel moment that we remember, right, is the fist pump for Devon Achane.
Yeah.
Which leads us into our final segment here. What will the Dolphins mid-round draftees do in 2024? And I say mid-round, I mean the guys other than the first-round picks. And so Devon Achane, he's got to stay healthy, right? Cam Good has got to get healthy. Cam Smith has got to get some playing time. Channing Tindall has got to make an impact. You've had good production from Javon Holland, Durham Smythe, Liam Eichenberg, Jason Sanders, Blake Ferguson, the long snapper. They're non-first rounders, but Achane and Cam Smith and Channing Tindall, Furones, what do you think you can get from those guys this season?
Well, yeah, and it's a true testament to how the Dolphins really, outside of Achane, I keep using the same phrase, have punted on the last 2 drafts. Without the first round picks, traded for either high round picks, traded for Tyreek Hill, a first rounder traded for Bradley Chubb, the one that they lost in the Tom Brady tampering incident and findings, the Brian Flores lawsuit. So really, it's Achane is at the heart and soul of the young talent you have brought in these past 2 years. Interestingly enough, we already know of the 5th round or the 5th year option status of the Dolphins' last 2 first-round picks, Jalen Waddle and Jalen Phillips, before they make another first-round pick since then. So they were 2021 first-round picks. We already know they're going to pick up the fifth-year option now after they've played 3 years. And then you had the 22 draft, 23 draft without a first-rounder. And then now you finally get back into it in 24 if Chris Greer holds on to it. I mean, he's liable to trade out if there's the right offers on the table.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Achane, him staying healthy, you mentioned that's huge for this team. I mean, I think he's only going to build on what he already showed, those that record of yards per attempt with a minimum of 100 carries. What a season he's coming off of. You need to protect that man at all costs, his electric speed. And then now, if you saw that photo of him, he's added on some muscle as he came in for offseason workouts. So, I mean, he's not just starting his offseason workouts now. He has been working out up to this point. I've been hearing that he's actually been working really hard. So the results are evident right there. Him, and then I look at Cam Smith. You need to be able to develop him. Hopefully with Anthony Weaver coming in as defensive coordinator, he's someone who will prioritize that and look to really develop young talent. I don't think Vic Fangio was particularly interested in doing that much last year. He just wanted, I mean, hey, he's 64, 65-year-old defensive mind. He just wants to get the production out of the guys, play his best players. You know, he's not thinking about I don't know, how old is Cam Smith? 22 years old, maybe. He's not thinking about, oh man, well, I really need to help him set him up for a bright future. So I think Anthony Weaver will take more of that approach in that. And you mentioned Cameron Good. We want to see him get right. He's a core special teamer now. Practice squad his first year, found his way through special teams, and then if he can get healthy, and then also he played some defensive snaps. If he can develop as a pass rusher as well. Channing Tindall, at this point, I think he's really just a special teamer. Maybe Anthony Weaver takes the same approach with developing him, but Anthony Campanelli at linebackers coach couldn't get much out of him as defensively these last 2 years. It's going to be hard for him to crack the lineup defensively behind. Now you brought in Jordan Brooks, you already have David Long there, and then also Anthony Walker, who was brought in as a veteran, who could be a rotational linebacker, sort of leadership type of guy.
And among these guys that we just mentioned, who is the most important? And I guess we're really just deciding between Achane and Cam Smith, right? I might. I might say it's Cam Smith. Achane, because you already have some offensive weapons in Tyreek and Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert. Now, Achane is a vital part of that. But if you flip over to the defensive side and the cornerback situation, you've got Jalen Ramsey. We don't know yet what Kendall Fuller is. We think that he's going to be a quality starter. Kader Kohu, he's still young. I think he's going to be a quality starter. But there's more question marks to me in the cornerback ranks. Now, you're good at safety with Holland and Jordan Poyer, but there's more questions in the cornerback ranks than there are on the, point-scoring offensive players. So I would lean toward Cam Smith. On the other hand, you're an offensive team, right? This is speed and all. That's where you make your money. So maybe it's Achane, but I'm going to say Cam Smith out of that group. Yeah, like you say, Channing Tindall. Yeah, I don't. He's probably special teamer, but I'm going to say Cam Smith is the most important.
Yeah, and with Smith is that you have the upside to now. All right, you saw 1 year where he only played 20 defensive snaps. You didn't get any defensive production out of a second-round pick, your first selection in that draft. Also, Channing Tindall was the first selection of the previous year's draft, even though he was number 102. But it's just how much more you have to gain from having some production, some level of production out of him in future seasons if you can bring him up. So that would be huge. Now, the Dolphins did bring in Kendall Fuller, so he's the starter opposite Jalen Ramsey. But if Cam Smith can grow into some type of productive corner, either get into some nickel and dime packages, you also have Kader Kohu there to compete against. But if Cam Smith can grow as a defensive player, then that would be huge for this Dolphins team.
Yeah, and you know what? Who brought up Raphael Courtwright? Hunter Long, third-round pick. I'll tell you this. his best contribution, and you know where I'm going with this, Coronas, right? He was traded for Jalen Ramsey, baby. That is the best contribution to team building that they might have had, and from a non-first rounder since Javon Holland. Right, same draft.
Hunter Long.
That's it. Hunter Long.
Watch Jalen Ramsey.
That's it. What a crucial piece of team building. What a crucial role Hunter Long played. Listen, here's one. Mal B. Crazy said, what about Ethan Bonner? I was talking about cornerbacks. He played well in limited production.
Yeah.
He's an unknown, but he definitely showed some potential, but I wouldn't put him. You know what?
He went undrafted, too. He was undrafted.
I forgot. So Nick Needham is there, but I wouldn't have Ethan Bonner over Nick Needham, Kader Kohu, and obviously not ahead of Kendall Fuller. So Ethan Bonner, while he shows some potential, he's a developmental guy, special teams developmental guy. He's probably not going to play much from scrimmage at all, is he? I wouldn't think.
Right. I wouldn't think. He was thrown in there in that playoff game with so many injuries. But yeah, and he was getting late season elevations as a special teamer because then you had some other DBs having to go into rotation, into starting snaps. So that's kind of how all that just pans out. But yeah, when he did get in there on defense, he had that fumble recovery in that game too. So yeah. I mean, he's actually been a productive playoff performer on this roster.
There you go. The case. There you go. Troy writes in and says, I thought Tyndall's read and react time seemed a bit slow at last year's training camp. I'll say this. I don't remember him specifically. I do remember, I thought the only linebacker that really stood out to me was David Long Jr. Jerome Bake was Bake. But I don't remember Tyndall being especially good or bad. Do you recall Tyndall at all from training camp?
Yeah, it's funny because you can see the speed, the natural speed he has, but yeah, just as far as instinctive on the field speed, it doesn't translate as much, so.
Yeah, and I know, you know what, and I wrote this, that Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl, I was talking to him, I think this was last year, middle of the year or whatever, but he was amazed that Channing Tindall had not found playing time. He was so impressed by Channing Tindall that he thought the guy was going to be an immediate contributor, but he was very surprised that that he hadn't gotten any kind of playing time yet.
Let's see if Joe Barry, the new linebackers coach, can get something out of him. But also, I mean, it would take a series of injuries for him to even get playing time right now. Right. The Dolphins did, while losing Bake, they did bring in two linebackers in Jordan Brooks and Anthony Walker. So with David Long still there, there's a whole depth chart that's ahead of Tyndall as far as inside linebacker snaps.
Yeah, and Duke Riley also.
And Duke Riley, right.
Yeah. George Doc says, does Achane eventually slide into running back one, or is he too small? I would say he's too small, and it's probably going to be a platoon situation. However, Mostert is kind of getting up there, right? He's 31. You might see
going on 32. Going on 32.
Okay, so you might see a platoon situation where Achane, maybe it's a 60-40 split with Mostert and Achane. Mostert getting the most. I don't see Achane getting the majority of the snaps, but what do you think? Could he slide into running back one, the starter?
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned his size, and he is getting bigger, so maybe he has that precisely in mind. Yeah, I mean, you work it when you have two guys like that. You work it so you make sure both of them get their 10 to 12 carries maybe in a game. So yeah, whoever is the starter, I think if you give them a good split of carries, and that's more so what you look at the workload. Yeah, I mean, maybe as time does go by and Achane does continue to build muscle, then you can let him do that. But you also want to protect him as well. So maybe not overwork him, especially when you do have Mostert there as well.
Speaking of non-first round picks, a couple of people I'm trying to see some. They're writing in about Cooper DeJean, the Iowa kid who is the corner. He could be the top-rated. Yeah, could be the top-rated corner. But some people think he's better suited for safety. Raphael Courtwright is one person who mentioned him. I'm trying to find the other one. But what do you think about DeJean? And he would, at 21, that's probably too high. 55 is too low, you're not going to get him. What do the Dolphins have a shot, and would you get him?
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting piece.
Yeah.
So, and we know our friend Joe Shad, he's one of his favorite players in the draft. So
Inside joke there.
For his reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he'd be an interesting piece, and we believe the Dolphins still do need to have another safety and someone who could be a versatile defensive back in Anthony Weaver's scheme. So that could be an interesting choice. Now, I do want to see them go to the trenches. I feel like the top three needs are O-line, D-line, and when you say O-line, it's really all positions on it. It could be interior, it could be a tackle, D-line, and also edge rusher. So I feel like now you're dipping down, and also as far as your team needs, and also you just went cornerback last year with your first pick and Cam Smith. So kind of doubling down at the same position, at a position where you already have Jalen Ramsey to lead the unit, and also Javon Holland. You brought in Jordan Poyer this year, who is up there in age, but you do have him for this year at safety. But I think there will be some sort of three safety dynamic formations in like dime packages and such. Where you could see the use of a rotational third safety, where if Cooper DeJean, who's pretty versatile in the secondary, that would be an interesting piece there.
Yeah. Pete's Take says, oh, man, Cooper is a no for me at 21. And then KC Fanatic says DeJean at 21. So a couple of differing opinions there. What did I just see? Well, a couple of Pete Steak said Joe Shad gets me so mad. That's funny. Joe Shad is a good friend of ours, but I will pass this on, and he will be very fired up. Peter, you know, Shad. Peter McDowell, this is a very good point. By the way, I think Elijah Campbell we should have mentioned at safety also, right? Yes. Peter McDowell says, don't fall asleep on Chris Brooks at running back. He looked good before he got injured. Yes, I agree. I look at Brooks more as a power back, but he didn't, when he came back last year, he didn't have that role. I don't know why. They could have used it for the last few games. But yeah, Chris Brooks, when you talk about HN moving up to running back one and the split between HN and Mostert, I'm not sure that Chris Brooks is in that, but I think he would have a role as a power back and short yardage back, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and maybe why the Dolphins didn't go for a power back, pay a premium for Derrick Henry or look for any other power back in free agency this year. Because you have Chris Brooks and also Jeff Wilson who can play that physical role. Actually, the last game the Dolphins won, Jeff Wilson was powering through for that key final first down that allowed the Dolphins to run the clock out before the game-winning field goal.
Yep. All right. So as we wrap it up here, Furones, we've got, matter of fact, don't forget to vote in our online poll on sunsentinel.com. Who do you think the Dolphins should take in the first round? And Furones, we're also going to have our first round picks, who we think that the Dolphins are going to select in the first round. Let me wrap it up with this, Furones, because we've already given some names of who we think the Dolphins could take. Who do you think that they will take, and at what position? I'll go first here. I'm going to say that they do take Laiatu Latu. I think that's how you pronounce it, the edge rusher from UCLA at number 21. But I sure do hope they trade back and pick up an extra second-round pick. But that's what I think that they'll do.
Wow. Okay, so you're going with your first mock draft.
I am.
Just updated, just released a new mock draft. You have him trading down, and then if you want to see who he picks, you have to log on to sunsentinel.com and view his mock draft. But you're going back now? You're going back on your old prediction? Okay, which I do like, by the way.
I am. And you know what? In the prediction that's coming out today, I did say I think they go offensive tackle and edge rusher in the first and second rounds. I have no idea what order. I don't know which players, and I don't know if they trade down. How's that for specific information, baby? How's that?
Hey, honestly, all of us who pretend like we know, we really don't know. All right, it's the Dolphins who know. It's the Dolphins. Right. It's the Dolphins personnel, and they're trying to keep this information tight. They don't want it to get out. So, yeah. Well, if Latu is there, I would love for him to be the pick at 21. But I'm going to stick with my pick of Graham Barton for the reasons I mentioned. I like his positional versatility, how he fits with his athleticism in the wide zone scheme, and how he can be a guard to start off, but then maybe transition to tackle down the line once Teron Armstead possibly retires after this season. He already thought about it this offseason, so I do like him there. And in my mock draft, I had the Dolphins trading down to get there. I found a nice spot where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers trading within the state. At 26, they try to get it in at 21, try to get a cornerback ahead of the Eagles, who are after the Dolphins. And I like that scenario for both teams because the Bucs can get there and get their guy before the Eagles, a couple of teams that have needs in the secondary, and then the Dolphins can trade back, acquire a third-round pick in that scenario, trading down 5 spots, and hopefully still getting the guy that they want in Graham Barton. But now, also, I feel like there's momentum for Barton, so maybe you need, if he's there, maybe you need to take him at 21 and not let him go possibly to these other teams. But if there's multiple offensive linemen that you like a Tyler Guyton also, I don't know if we've mentioned him today yet, but who has come in on a visit, Jackson Powers Johnson. If multiple linemen are there, then trading down is a great prospect for the Dolphins so that you can add capital while still getting one of the guys that you like if you're not so sold on one specifically over the other. But again, if Latu's there, if Murphy's there, especially if Verse is there, then you just snag him up at 21 and don't even think about it. So,
right. I agree. So we will see. We will see what happens. We will be with you next Tuesday, or no. Actually, we don't know the day. It'll be either Monday or Wednesday. We've got to figure it out with a post-draft wrap-up. But that's David Feronas. I'm Chris Perkins. You're watching SunSentinel.com.